Welcome back to another deep dive. We try to unpack these complex topics, give you the essential insights. And today we're exploring something really remarkable and, well, often debated, Marian apparitions. We're focusing on a specific case from Chile, quite powerful and sometimes controversial, the apparitions in Peñablanca. Now, this isn't just a straight historical account. It's, layered. We've pulled from a whole range of sources for you. Things like personal testimonies from YouTube videos, which are quite raw historical documents too, and even the official church perspectives, from Wikipedia entries, other texts. Our goal here is to sort of unravel the events, the messages, which were pretty intense, and the impact these apparitions had on individuals, but also on the church itself.
Yeah, and just to set the scene a bit, Marian apparitions in Catholicism, they're basically instances where the Virgin Mary is believed to appear to one or maybe more people at specific times, specific places. But you've really got to understand the church's approach here. It's very cautious. I mean, think about it. Out of countless reports throughout history, only 28 have actually been officially approved as of supernatural origin.
Only 28. Wow, that's a tiny fraction.
Exactly. So you have the big ones everyone knows, Guadalupe, Fatima, Lourdes. But then you also get cases like, say, Medjugorje. Devotion is allowed there, but the visions themselves, not formally declared authentic, it just really highlights this rigorous, very careful discernment process the church uses.
Okay, so focusing back on Peñablanca, who was the central figure? Who did this all revolve around?
That would be Miguel Angel Poblet. And his early life, well, our sources suggest it was pretty challenging.
Challenging how?
Well, apparently, abandoned by his biological mother, he moved between different homes. Someone named Doña Melina, various children's shelters too, like Hogar Badal, Hogar Galvarino. His formal abandonment was even reported to a minors' court. He went to public school for a time, seemed sort of ordinary in some ways.
And that background, did it play into how people viewed the apparitions later?
Oh, absolutely. It's a significant detail. His early life and then later on, his reported gender identity change. These became points of, controversy. Speculation, too. You had psychological theories popping up, things like a syndrome of maternal deficiency, trying to explain it all away.
Right, trying to find a natural explanation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what's also really important is that many followers, devout ones, still saw him as an instrument of God, regardless of his personal life path. One source kind of put it like, one should not lose proportions, basically saying, don't let secondary issues like the seer's later behavior distort what's really important in the messages themselves.
Okay, I see. So with Miguel Angel at the center, how did these encounters, these apparitions, actually start? When's the first one our sources mention?
Well, the first appearance recorded in our sources is June 20th, 1983, around 3:00 p.m. Interestingly, it's identified as the fifth apparition in the series, so things were already happening before that date became prominent. Initially, they started quite privately at a woman named Maria Teresa Caman's house, but they soon moved to a more public spot, this hill called Cerro Monte Carmelo. And the Virgin herself apparently called it paradise.
Paradise. Okay, so this hill, Monte Carmelo, was there anything special about it beyond just being, a public place? Did the Virgin say why there?
It seems so. The sources indicate it wasn't just random. The actual spot on Monte Carmelo was a grotto. And originally it had a sculpture of the White Lady of Peace. But apparently at the Virgin's explicit request, this was changed to an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Ah, okay. Any reason given for that specific change?
Yes. The Virgin reportedly explained it herself. She said, I have come to prepare the way for my son for his second coming. So changing the image to the Sacred Heart really emphasizes that direct link to Christ, making the place a kind of preparatory ground, you could say.
Wow. Okay, so moving beyond the messages for a moment, the actual events people witness sound pretty extraordinary. The sources talk about a whole range of phenomena.
You really do. It's quite diverse.
Like the solar miracles, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Like Fatima.
Exactly. Very similar. Numerous witnesses report in the sun, sort of dancing on its axis, throwing out rays of different colors. People claim they could look right at it without any harm, which is, normally impossible. And some even said they saw images in the sun, Jesus' face or a cross.
Incredible. What else? Were there other light phenomena?
Yes, definitely. People described these beautiful rays of light, flashes, they said, in gold, white, blue, violet hues, illuminating the whole hill and filling people with this sense of, joy. And then there were the Eucharistic miracles. These are particularly striking.
Eucharistic miracles? What did that involve?
Accounts describe the Holy Host, the communion wafer after consecration, appearing visibly on Miguel Angel's tongue. Sometimes it even had a cross made of blood on it. There were also reports of hosts just appearing in chalices or ciboriums. Those are the cups and containers for the hosts.
Just appearing out of nowhere.
Reportedly brought by Archangel San Miguel from other churches. That's the claim. In one really specific instance, 5 hosts were apparently seen just floating above the roof of the Virgin's house. They were then collected and distributed as communion.
Floating hosts. Okay. Did the messages say anything about how communion should be handled during these events?
Yes. The Virgin apparently emphasized that Holy Communion should only be given out when things were orderly and people were properly prepared, spiritually ready.
Makes sense. Now, the sources also mention stigmata. That's the appearance of wounds like Christ's, right?
Correct. In Miguel Angel's case, wounds appeared on his scalp and forehead, bleeding quite heavily, very reminiscent of the crown of thorns. And what makes this particularly compelling, or at least noteworthy, is the medical aspect.
Medical aspect. How so?
Several doctors, including named dermatologists Dr. Alan Rojas, Dr. Carla Heiber, Dr. Adela Frias-Lorin, Dr. Ivan Separiza, Dr. Ramon Garcia, they reportedly witnessed these wounds appearing spontaneously, right there, while he was in ecstasy.
They saw them appear.
Yes, and then, perhaps even more strangely, they saw them disappear. Completely, without a trace, no scab, nothing. Usually within 1 to 2 hours.
Wow. And what did these doctors conclude? Did they have a medical explanation?
They explicitly ruled out natural causes. They ruled out self-infliction or, hysteria. Their statement, according to the sources, was pretty definitive. There are no cutaneous diseases with these characteristics.
Yeah.
So they're basically saying, medically, we can't explain this. It doesn't fit any known skin condition.
And this happened during ecstasy. What was that like for him?
Reports say he experienced great pain, difficulty breathing during these episodes. His body would become incredibly rigid. One account even claims 6 people couldn't lift him while he was in that state.
Intense. Just physically demanding, it sounds like. Were there other, maybe less physical phenomena reported?
Yes, a few others stand out. There was something called mystical communion. Sometimes the Virgin apparently told Miguel Angel to receive communion mystically. And she'd invite others, if they were properly confessed, to just open their mouths and receive it too, even with no priest there distributing, emphasizing Christ's direct presence.
So communion without a minister.
That's the claim. Also, Miguel Angel reportedly spoke in languages he didn't know. French, Hebrew, Latin were mentioned. And one more visual thing people said, a eucalyptus tree on the hill actually took the form of the Virgin.
A tree changing shape. Okay. The range of phenomena is just staggering. Let's shift, though, to the messages. That seems to be the real core here. Our sources say the messages came not just from Mary, but archangels, too. And even God the Father and Jesus.
That's right. Michael, Gabriel, the 7 archangels, God the Father, the child Jesus messages were attributed to all of them. And the core themes were, pretty consistent across the board.
What were those main themes? What was being asked of people?
Primarily a call for conversion, fervent prayer, especially the rosary, and something called the 7 Sorrows devotion, penance, fasting, but importantly, under priestly direction. Also, love for your neighbor, staying steadfast in the faith, and frequent confession and communion. Pretty traditional Catholic calls to piety, really.
And did the Virgin clarify who she was in these messages?
Yes, she identified herself in several ways. Mother of Mount Carmel, connecting to the location, Lady White of Peace, like the original grotto statue, and Immaculate Heart of the Incarnation of the Son of God. She also made a really important theological point about her role. She stated, I am not the redemptrix, but the co-redemptrix.
Co-redemptrix. What's the significance of that distinction?
It's crucial. Redemptrix would imply Mary herself redeemed humanity, which Catholic doctrine reserves solely for Christ. Co-redemptrix suggests her unique cooperation with Christ in redemption. It's a more nuanced term, acknowledges her special role without, taking away from Christ's. It is, however, still a debated theological concept for some.
Okay, so those were the spiritual calls, but you mentioned intense warnings earlier, prophetic warnings.
Yes, very much so. Some were focused on Chile specifically, warnings of major earthquakes. One message even supposedly pinpointed it. The earthquake would be on a Thursday at 3 a.m.
That's specific. Wow.
Yeah. Plagues, widespread destruction, bloodshed too, all foretold for Chile if prayers and sacrifices weren't stepped up. The Virgin apparently said, nature is horrified by the sins that men commit, linking natural disasters to human sin.
And did these warnings go beyond Chile? Global scale?
They did, quite dramatically. Messages spoke about Russia becoming the scourge of the world. Why? because of anti-Christian doctrines
Mm-hmm.
that were supposedly permeating even high levels of the church.
Yeah.
There were predictions of China attacking Russia, the United States being invaded. It paints a picture of a world really in times of trial.
Geopolitical predictions tied to religious warnings. That's quite a mix.
And it didn't stop there. The warnings also turned inward towards the church itself, a crisis within.
What kind of crisis?
The messages were very direct, almost harsh. Talk of the Church of the Apostates gaining strength, priests and consecrated people becoming, the quote is, sewers of impurities. Why? Because they were chasing pleasure, honor, and money, and leading souls to perdition. Warnings about wolves in sheep's clothing, even saying the Vatican was the most coveted prey of the evil one.
That's incredibly strong language about the church hierarchy.
Extremely.
Yeah.
And it extended to the Pope himself. Prophecies that the Holy Father would be attacked, suffer greatly, be forced to flee Rome, and eventually die.
So faced with all these dire predictions, catastrophes, internal church problems, did the messages offer any solutions, any way out?
Yes, there were proposed divine solutions. The most consistent one was the importance of consecrating Russia to Mary's Immaculate Heart. This was seen as key to achieving a period of peace. She also asked for specific consecrations for Chile and a whole list of other American countries, the U.S., Canada, Mexico, Panama, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico.
Consecration as a spiritual remedy. Anything else?
Yes, the miraculous medal. Miguel Angel was apparently given a design for medal to be minted, similar, the sources say, to the one revealed to Catherine Labouré back in France in 1830. And this Peñablanca medal came with a promise. Miracles of conversion and healing for those who wear it with faith.
A specific devotional object with promised graces. Interesting.
And one more thing on the messages. They directly address the issue of false seers, specifically calling out Clemente Dominguez, the controversial figure from El Palmar de Troya in Spain, accusing him of faking stigmata using anesthesia and distorting other genuine apparitions like Fatima, Lourdes, and Garabandal.
So the Peñablanca messages were even trying to sort of police other claims.
It seems that way, yes.
Yeah.
Setting themselves apart.
Okay, so you have all these extraordinary claims, phenomena, messages, warnings. How on earth did the official church hierarchy react to all this? Must have caused quite a stir.
Oh, it definitely did. There was significant tension. The local bishop of Valparaiso at the time, Francisco de Borja Valenzuela, he launched an investigation. A priest, Father Jaime Fernandez Montero, was put in charge. And after that exhaustive investigation, the bishop prohibited anyone from attending the apparition site, flat out.
Prohibited attendance? What was his reasoning?
His conclusion was blunt. These were not signs of God. He even called the whole situation a shame for Chile, a very strong condemnation.
Wow, okay. So case closed by the church then? Or did things change later on?
Well, it's rarely that simple with the church, is it? It's more nuanced. Despite that initial, very strong non-recognition of supernatural origin, a later bishop, Jorge Medina Esteves, he actually authorized Mass to be celebrated at the Monte Carmelo Sanctuary.
He allowed Mass there after the previous bishop banned attendance.
Yes, but with a very specific condition. Mass could be held monthly, on the first Saturday. However, it was explicitly stated that these Masses had to avoid any reference to the apparitions themselves. The focus had to be solely on devotion to the Virgin Mary in a general sense.
Ah, I see. So allowing piety, but keeping distance from the specific apparition claims. A delicate balance, like you said earlier.
Exactly. It allows for a continued spiritual practice for the faithful drawn there, but without the institution giving its stamp of approval to the events themselves.
And yet, despite that official caution, maybe even opposition and the controversies around Miguel Angel later in life, the faith of many people, pilgrims, even some priests, it just endured, didn't it?
It absolutely did. That's one of the most striking aspects of the Peñablanca story. Many people, even some priests, viewed Miguel Angel as simply an instrument, chosen by God, perhaps flawed, but his personal path didn't, for them, negate the truth of the initial messages or experiences.
So they separated the messenger from the message, in a way?
You could say that. And the persistence of belief is really notable. Sources mention that even a decade after the last reported apparition, the flame of faith continues to burn at the sanctuary, still attracting lots of faithful Chileans and foreigners. Conversions, confessions, still reported as common there.
So it didn't just fade away when the church disapproved.
Not at all. It directly challenged what some clergy apparently expected. They thought it wouldn't stand the test of time, but it did for many. There was even a priest, Father Miguel Contardo, who actively supported the apparitions. He faced serious consequences.
Consequence? Like,
He was suspended a divinis. That means he was barred from performing priestly duties, celebrating Mass, hearing confessions, that sort of thing, and reassigned. Why? For publishing photos related to the Peñablanca events.
Wow. So priests supporting it could face real disciplinary action. It really highlights the divide.
It does. And it makes you ask, like you said, what kept people believing so strongly.
And maybe the answer's in the personal impact. The sources give some really compelling testimonies, don't they? Stories of individual lives changed.
Yes, those personal accounts are powerful. There's one woman who described herself as just a lukewarm Christian before Peñablanca. She experienced this profound conversion, found a much deeper faith, and it even led her to visit other Marian sites around the world. It was a starting point for her.
A complete turnaround. Any others?
There's the story of a former Communist Party militant, someone who had completely renounced Christianity. But then the 1985 earthquake hit Chile, and through learning about Peñablanca, he returned to his faith.
That's quite a journey back.
And then there's a really poignant one, a couple struggling with infertility. They received a message through Miguel Angel, apparently from the Virgin, addressing their situation. They did conceive, but tragically, the child was born alive but died within 24 hours.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. How did they react?
The source describes it as an incredibly difficult test of faith, which they accepted with, quote, incredible resignation. It speaks volumes about the depth of belief, even through immense sorrow.
It really does. Were there other, maybe less dramatic, but still significant impacts reported?
Yes, smaller scale things too. A doctor lent her Peñablanca medal to her sick father and reported a positive outcome, some kind of improvement. And the influence spread beyond Chile. A sanctuary dedicated to the White Lady of Peace was set up in Barranco, Lima, Peru in 1995. They held dozens of rosaries of dawn there, attended by local priests. It became an official public devotion there.
So the devotion itself took root elsewhere.
Exactly. And pilgrims back at Monte Carmelo consistently reported feelings of incomparable tenderness, joy, peace. Some described sensory experiences too, like smelling roses or incense when none was there, or seeing swallows greet them as they arrived at the hill. These personal, often subtle experiences clearly cemented belief for many individuals.
When you pull it all together, the story of Peñablanca is just this incredibly rich, complex mix. You have faith, intense human experience, these extraordinary reported supernatural events, institutional scrutiny. It's a really powerful narrative.
It really is. And it highlights that ongoing challenge, doesn't it? Discerning phenomena like this. Peñablanca shows how strong individual belief can be, how it can flourish and inspire widespread devotion, even when the official church recognition isn't there or is even negative. It really lays bare that complex dance between claims of the divine, human perception, how we interpret things, and the role of institutional authority. And maybe underneath it all, it just points to that enduring human need for meaning, for connection, especially when faced with the unknown.
Yeah. It leaves you thinking, in a world today where we're just bombarded with information and certainty feels so hard to come by, what does it actually mean to believe in something that seems, well, unbelievable? How do stories like Peñablanca challenge our neat little boxes of reality? And maybe more importantly, what can they teach us about the sheer power, the resilience of human faith when it confronts mystery and doubt? Something to definitely mull over.